Oh hell yeah, it's Doom! Doom! Yeah, Doom! 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 Doom? Yes, this is Doom 3, the black sheep of the series. This is a well-warranted title to say the least. Compared to the classic and modern titles, this one stands out the most. Now whether that's a good or bad thing, who knows, but by the end of this, you'll know my stance at least. This game was developed by id Software, the guys who revolutionized shooters with games like Wolfenstein 3D, the original Dooms, and Quake. Then they revolutionized the multiplayer space with Quake 3 Arena. Now comes the next big revolution in gaming, lighting technology. No, seriously you guys, this unified lighting and shadowing technology was revolutionary at the time and looks incredible. Instead of every object having its own lighting, you can light the whole map and have the objects react to it. This makes for a more realistic look in-game and can also help impact the mood. Now having a game full of dark and deep shadows where you have some kind of light source to seep through is a great way to showcase this technology. And what a perfect excuse to change the atmosphere to be a little bit more sinister. Alright, so Doom 3 was released in the year 2004 for PC. There was also, from what I was told, an impressive port on the Xbox. The following year, they released an expansion called The Resurrection of Evil. A re-release of Doom 3 called Doom 3 BFG Edition was published by Bethesda and released in 2012. This version has quite a list of things that makes it different than the original Doom 3. First off, it does come with the base Doom 3, the Resurrection of Evil expansion, as well as the Lost Missions, which is a new exclusive expansion to this title. On top of that, it comes with Ultimate Doom, which was the base Doom plus all of its expansions, and Doom 2 with all of its expansions as well. Before the Doom 1 plus 2 collection came out, this was probably the best bang for your buck bundle for Doom that you could have gotten. The BFG edition also makes changes to the base game as well as expansions. You're no longer allowed to skip cutscenes. You now have a shoulder-mounted flashlight which replaces the original handheld flashlight, which means now you can have the light showing while you're able to shoot at the same time. But in general, there is more light sources and it makes it a much brighter game compared to the original. There's now a higher quantity of health, armor, and ammo. Now a lot of these changes are a direct reaction to fan feedback from when the original Doom 3 was released. Again, Doom 3 was divisive, and one of those reasons was because of the more horror push that this game had. So this is kinda to help alleviate that to make it more overall friendly to the average Doom consumer. Doom 3 was, in all intents and purposes, a horror game first and foremost. For this playthrough, I did end up deciding to play this on the BFG edition. Now I know typically when I play a game for the first time, I do like to play the version that best resembles the developer's initial intent. But I did a lot of research and I asked my friends and it was suggested that I try the BFG edition. With that decision though, it does mean I get to play through Doom 3, the Resurrection of Evil expansion, and the Lost Missions expansion. Looking through my notes, I have things broken down like this. I have day 1, which basically just has my first impressions of this and really trying to get to grips on what's happening. I have day 2, in which I got the rest of my feelings out and then I finished the title. And then I have notes set for each expansion as well. We'll be going through these notes bit by bit and I'll be talking about my feelings on them as we go. This game has a very slow, long startup, sets up the pace, sets up the world you're in, kind of gives you some lore and explain what's happening, how you got here. I mean, this might sound kind of strange, but for a Doom game, it took me about 15 minutes before I got my hand on my very first gun. Other Dooms do have a story, but this one felt a bit more heavy-handed, I guess. If I were to guess, I would say it's probably related to the idea that this is a game that pushed the boundaries and they really want to show off what they've achieved. And honestly, taking your time to have these cutscenes does a good job showing the tech at hand, especially in 2004. Because again, graphically, this game looked amazing back then. The first thing I noticed when I got my hands on the guns is that they feel like they kind of, lack impact. they don't quite feel as good or as juicy as other shooters do. After looking into this, apparently some things were adjusted between Doom 3 and the BFG edition that might have impacted the gun feel. I'm not entirely sure on the details or how accurate this is, but that is something that pops up when I look it up. Describing gun feel is so strange to me because it is such a subjective opinion. It's a combination of impact and good audio mixing, right? And one thing that doesn't really help Doom 3's case here is the shotgun. There are so many videos, Reddit threads, game facts that I found of people describing this shotgun and how inconsistent it is. In Doom, the shotgun tends to be your default weapon, and to have it miss 90% of the time really sucks. That being said, you can get that little buttery smooth sweet spot. Sometimes if you're just close enough and you're lucky, and that's the problem here, you have to have luck, you can get a good, nice one-shot kill. And that's when the guns feel good. But maybe, this is a little theory crafting here, the gun inconsistency is supposed to help with the horror vibes this game is going for. Even in the BFG edition, where things are brighter and your flashlight works a bit differently, this game is still absolutely a horror game first and foremost. We're talking dark, claustrophobic level design, whispers and laughter in the background, moments where the game stops and the screen turns completely red, demons that literally pop out of nowhere to be a jump scare. No matter how you try to dice it, this game is a horror title. And to go with these dark, claustrophobic maps, you have your flashlight, which is actually still really annoying to deal with. You have this 30-second timer you can use it before it runs out, then you turn it off for 5 seconds and then it's fully charged again. What was the point in that? Hell, if you still want to have control over that horror element, I would just have segments of the game where the flashlight doesn't work. In that way, during the high action combat sections, you don't have to worry about being able to see where the hell you're going or where the hell you're aiming. This would even help more with map exploration. Now we're at the end of the day one notes. Most of this has been me bitching and complaining. But this was me getting to grips on what this game was and trying to understand what package I had. Because again, this is very different from any other Doom I've played. So really, it's just me learning a new language. I don't think I'd have this much trouble if the game wasn't called Doom. You know, if that makes sense. There was just expectations based on that title. Now, if we're gonna end day one, I do want to end it on a positive note. One of the things that really impressed me was actually the mirrors and how well they reflected. I know that sounds goofy or cheesy, but whenever I play any game, I always like to see how far I can push or what those graphics are doing, right? And if I'm playing a first-person shooter, the things I'll always do is look down to see if I have feet, and also notice if there's a reflection or not, because a lot of games like to skip out on those details because they're not needed for the average player. I always notice when I have those, and I deeply appreciate it when I do. But now we're on to day two. Let's see if my opinions kind of change. Now that my initial expectations have had time to sit and really digest, I've re-entered this game under its terms, understanding that it's definitely a different experience than previous titles. The gun still felt like crap even by the end, and that is definitely unfortunate. Though I did get used to this and it just became kind of numb by the end. Something that started to stick out to me that didn't really make an impact on my first day was that you have to reload the guns. And I know that sounds kind of crazy because, it's a gun, you have to reload it. But in most Doom games, you don't reload your guns. You just kind of shoot until you run out of ammo. This is the first title in which every gun is reloadable. Now I can see why some Doom purists would see that as a negative instead of a positive, but if you look at this as a horror game, it makes sense. Nothing makes you more stressed than having a demon come after you and you have to reload before you can continue shooting. In original Doom, you wouldn't have that issue. That pressure helps with the horror theme. There was something that was getting me really annoyed about these enemies though. Anytime you got hit, the camera would shake, right? And it's more of a violent shake if it's a physical attack versus a long-range bullet or something, right? And this causes a problem because it gets really hard to reposition yourself to properly aim. Instead, all you really can do is spray and pray. Luckily, this tactic usually works, but it does drain your HP like nobody's business. So the problem here is that you get locked down, you lose HP, you lose a lot of ammo, and you're just barely able to scrape by. This might sound repetitious though, but that does match with the horror setting that they're trying to match. That uncontrollable anxiety that you're feeling because the camera's shaking, you're getting hit, you're losing HP, shoot wildly. This game had a mission, and that was to be a horror title, and they so far have succeeded. As you're playing through, the game will often take the camera away from you to show someone else doing another activity that's affecting the world at the time. Like a standard cutscene. But another way to do storytelling is through these audio logs. The best way I can describe it for other games is that it's very Bioshocky or System Shocky. I do have 2 complaints about these logs though. One is that I do wish the audio logs would autoplay as soon as you pick them up, or if there was an option to press and hold a button while you pick it up to play the audio. That is something that Bioshock allows you to do. But in this case, every time you pick one up, you do have to enter that menu to play the audio, and it's a very stop and go experience, which breaks the tension completely. Another complaint I have is that often enough your gateway progression is stopped by you needing to pick up a key or one of these data pads which happen to look exactly like the audio logs. So there were many times where I picked up that data pad to continue in the story and I thought it was an audio log and I was trying to figure out what am I supposed to do, and my progression would stop for a good 3 to 5 minutes trying to figure out where am I going. That was a huge problem I ran into. I know that might be just not me taking my time to read it or, slow my experience down, but maybe these experiences would be less of a problem if this game was more readable to begin with. Like every Doom game, eventually you go to hell. But I will say, hell in this game stood out quite a bit. It was a really cool set piece in every regard. All the demons look a little bit different, and the map looks cool. Also, after you get back from hell, the maps start transforming and becoming more and more hellish. In fact, I would say from the beginning of the game, the maps slowly are turning into hell. And I think that's a really cool touch, and by the end of the game, you're exploring these half hell, half Mars base settings. It takes a while to get there though, and unfortunately I did start getting fatigue on the maps just looking identical. All of them are built from the same pieces over and over. It's not until Hell's Invasion starts really speaking through this design that it really starts becoming its own identity, Also, after your first trip in Hell and you fight this boss, you get the cube. This cube is actually a really cool gimmick. After you kill 5 demons, it charges and allows you to use it once. It basically completely kills a regular demon or does a lot of damage on a boss, as well as healing your HP. Now for regular gameplay, this is cool, right? But Nightmare difficulty is where this becomes more of a really cool gimmick. Alright, so on Nightmare mode, your HP is always draining until you get to 25% and then just stays there. Demons on Nightmare do a lot more damage, so basically you're one shot dead. But from the beginning of the game, you have the cube. So it's a balance of killing enemies, using the cube to keep you healthy while you're going through these levels. It makes things a lot more energetic. While doing a lot of research for this video, I watched speedruns of it. Definitely worth looking into, guys. It's really cool. So I kind of hinted at this earlier when I mentioned repetitious game design, but part of what makes it feel repetitious and samey and all those jazzy words is there's a lot of backtracking in this game. I know that's a Doom core thing. You grab key, you go to door. But because of the way these levels are designed, there's not much exploration to go there and go back. You're just going basically straight down these really spooky hallways and go straight back down these really spooky hallways. All the backtracking, the similar level design, the dark and claustrophobic nature of it all made a lot of things feel repetitive. It was also by the time I reached near the end of this game, I realized I don't know what my armor actually does. See, in regular Doom games, the armor will help tank the hits for you, so you take less damage. In this game, you take more damage than your armor ever could. I felt like for most of the game, I had either half or full armor. And that's crazy, because I got hit a lot. I did kinda lie, so this is where my day 2 ends. I did have one more session, but that one last session was just the final boss. I entered the game and just finished it then and there, and I was done with my first playthrough of Doom 3 BFG Edition. From here, I have way less notes to really go through, because the next thing is the expansion, the Resurrection of Evil. This is a continuation of the story, but you have a different protagonist. I greatly enjoy this because the ending of the base game kind of has a cliffhanger. You see, there's the main villain, Dr. Malcolm. He's the one that bridged that gap between the humans and the demons, allowing all this chaos. And you never directly handle him. He does antagonize you quite a bit throughout the game, but you never actually deal with him. It feels weird, and I'm not gonna lie, if I only had the base Doom 3, I would be left kind of underwhelmed. But at the end of Doom 3, you do see him in a demon form. In the expansion, you get to take him down as that demon, now called the Maledict. Slight complaint, maybe it's just a me thing, but I do find it weird I'm playing as a different protagonist. Like Doom 1 and Doom 2, you're playing as the same guy. But in this, in Doom 3, you're playing as one guy, and in the expansion, you're playing as another. Hell, in the Lost Levels, you're playing as a third guy, so you have 3 different Doom protagonists in Doom 3 alone. It's a very small, nonsensical problem, so it doesn't actually hold any bearing on my overall opinion of this game, or this bundle, if you would. This expansion brings 2 things to the table that stick out the most. One, you have this heart. This is your new demon relic that you're playing with. It replaces the cube. I didn't really use it much. It allows you to slow time and it has some other abilities. I actually didn't use it ever. Very little. I did use the slowdown once or twice, but it is a thing that I wasn't quite sure on how to use because whenever I wanted to, it wasn't going to work. And I feel like I needed to read a manual to figure out how to use this new ability. I kind of wish the game quickly gave me like one of those tutorial sheets on the screen and just told me how it works, but it never did and I just kind of played the game without using it. The game also gives you this really cool gravity gun, very Half-Life 2. I know these games came out around the same time, so I don't know if this was an inspiration thing or what have you, because this was an expansion. But it was cool to see. It was a bit of a letdown because it's not as interactive as the gravity gun is in Half-Life. I used it a lot at the beginning, but as the game went on, I used it less and less, and then I just completely stopped using it. This expansion's where you finally get the tried and true Doom weapon, the double-barrel shotgun. And I can say without hyperbole that this is the best feeling gun in this game. I loved it so much I would use it over the optimal weapon for the circumstance I was given. This campaign is a lot shorter than the original. I'm talking about 25% of the base game is this. And I don't mean that as a bad thing, I actually enjoyed that, because after beating the base game, I was kinda getting tired of this. Unfortunately though, after defeating the Maledict, I did have one more expansion to do. Luckily, this one was even shorter. I actually had a lot of fun with the Lost Levels. I don't know if it's because by then I fully understood what Doom 3 was and how to approach it, or if the Lost Levels takes a page more from the action side of Doom. By the end of it, there are a couple of battle arenas, and I think this game lends itself very well to that style of combat. Story-wise, this expansion takes place in between the main game. Not that it really matters though, because it's just you going on an adventure to destroy a portal in hell. And I guess that kind of sums up my Doom experience as a whole. The start was really rough, but by the end of it, I did end up enjoying myself overall. And I don't just mean the Lost Levels, I mean regular Doom 3. By the end of it, I was enjoying my time. It's just a matter of reapproaching it. If you drop all your expectations of the series and you're just engaging Doom 3 as its own entity, as a showcase of new lighting technology, this game succeeds. And they use horror as the way to show off that new tech. They had a mission and they succeeded. They used Doom as the IP to do that in, and I think that may be the issue people have. That being said, this game did sell well. This game was in no way a failure. It was a success. But it is the black sheep of the family for a reason. If you notice, there were a lot of complaints I had throughout this video. using horror as an excuse to kind of explain away a lot of these issues doesn't actually work when you have plenty of examples of horror and action blending together. So I would say overall, right, this game is definitely a game that had an image and it succeeded in making that image, though it did create a lot of problems while doing so that made me as a player pretty annoyed at that experience. Like I mentioned, overall by the end of it I did start enjoying it, maybe in a little bit of a Stockholm Syndrome kind of way, but I can say I don't have a high chance of revisiting this one compared to the other Doom titles. So yes, is this game a pretty decent shooter? Sure. Is this game a pretty decent horror game? Sure. Is it spectacular at either of those? No. This game is a perfectly average game with tech that was extremely impressive for the time. Would I recommend you playing this game if you were curious? Absolutely. Would I recommend playing this game just because you like other Doom games? Probably not. But if you do like to experiment with some horror, and you like stories that deal with the occult, I would give this game a play. So yes, that is my thoughts on Doom 3, specifically the BFG edition, but overall, this has been my Doom 3 experience. It was definitely more ranty than normal. I didn't have a proper, structure to this video. Typically, I do rant and rave as I go, but this time it was less organized than I usually like to do. So I'd like to thank everybody who stuck on by for this far into the video. If you like what you saw, leave a like. If you want to see more like this, subscribe. And if you have your own thoughts on the matter, or just want to suggest something to me, and I'll gladly read it. That's all, everybody. So for me, have a great day, great night, great evening, whenever you're watching this. And see you in the next video.